Okay, good evening and welcome back. So hope everybody had a good weekend. And all right, so we're closing in on this second third of the class, and the second take home midterm is going to be due next week. Okay, and then starting next week we'll have a whole another third of the class. We'll do a bunch of macroeconomic stuff, and so we'll kind of move on from the micro stuff in the middle, and we're going to do all macroeconomics from here on out starting next week. Um, so what I have planned for today is so I have your if you go to the midterm two spring 2021 section, I've got a whole practice exam that we're going to go through right now for today's meeting. And so we got a practice exam, got some solutions that we're going to go through. So we'll do kind of a big review session and a bunch of practice questions for the exam, and then your exam is here. It's going to be very similar to what's going to be the style of the practice exam. So you should be, if you have any questions on the practice exam as we go through it, make sure you let me know. So you'll be fully prepared for the take-home exam, which is here. And then I also have a little extra credit thing that can get you some extra points on the exams if you want to do that. And we'll kind of come to that later. So before we get started with the review session, and so because we've kind of caught up a little bit, and I don't have to squeeze any chapters in before the midterm tonight or the take-home exam. So I have a whole. So today's session is just going to be kind of review, practice questions, and no new material. And so I like to, if I have time and I don't have to squeeze in another new material, what I like to do is, if there's time for it, like there is tonight, I like to just do kind of a practice questions and a little review session before the exam, and so you don't have to kind of learn a bunch of new material right before the exam. So that's what we'll do tonight in a few minutes, is just start this review session and prepare you for the exam. But before we do that, let me just. All right, so the last. So it looks like the last, especially this homework, and so the last two homeworks, um, the chapter 9 and the chapter 16. So I noticed there's been a little bit less. I mean, less people have done it. So I don't know if that's because it's harder, or it just it was longer, or both of these, or maybe maybe I didn't explain it well or something like that. But when the homeworks get assigned, make sure you let me know if there's any questions. Because if you don't understand something, you don't, or maybe just it's getting to the point in the semester where you have other things to do as well, which is fine. I mean, if you miss a homework or two, it's not the end of the world. But um, I do want you to have time and to understand the material. So for the chapter 16 homework, which is due today, it looks like there's only been one submission thus far. So are there questions on that problem or that concept before we move on? And so there's going to be another one of those on the review session, and another one on the take-home exam. So I do want to make sure that everyone's clear on what to do on that type of problem that was similar to the homework question. So are there any specific questions that I can help you with beforehand on the chapter 16 homework that's due today? Because again, I've noticed that a lot of people haven't turned it in yet. I want to make sure that you're good on that. So are there any questions just on any specific parts, or any general questions, whatever, on the chapter 16 homework that you might have? Yes. Okay.
Hi, Professor. I'm not quite, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I'm not quite prepared to ask my question, so I'm kind of pulling up my stuff here. So
That's okay.
I might wait till the end so I can look at kind of what I
Okay.
want
Do
more
you want me to
specifically.
Okay. Do you want me to come back to you?
Yeah, I'll let you know if when I'll
Okay.
put something in the chat if it seems appropriate to interrupt.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, so I wanted to make sure there weren't any questions on that. I mean, also, uh, it, so I want to I want to post the solutions for it so you can use the solutions to help you with the take-home exam.
Yeah, it
But
was on the last question, actually. I had a hard time with here, let me open it up here. With the chart, figuring out how to fill out that chart at the end. Let's
okay,
see, on F, on the,
the very last one. Okay, let me pull it up.
yeah. Or was it E? Yeah, that was, F is the graphing part, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
the
not
very
the
last.
problem. It's E. Yeah.
Oh, so the big chart. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let me see if I can help you with that. So easiest thing to do here is just do this.
I tried to look at the two examples that you had in the homework help, but I just
Yeah, no,
think
I don't
I
think
was
you're.
overthinking it, so I think I got frustrated.
Yeah, so no, that's okay. You're not the only one that obviously that's has had problems with it because only one person's turned it in. So that's why that's why I wanted to do this. And all right, so let me see if I can explain that. And
Yeah,
another,
can you make,
all right, and so we'll go through this, and you can remind me, but there's a cursor there. So I do want to post the solutions so you'll have them for the take-home exam, which is due next Monday. But I can give it if the students need it, I can give you a few extra days to do the assignment, and then post the solutions a few days later if we need that because I don't want everyone just you know after class just freaking out and staying up all night trying to finish it. So you guys can let me know via chat or just verbally if you need a few more days to do it. That's fine with me. So it's a longer assignment. It looks like it might have been one of the more difficult ones. And so if you need some extra days to do it, then I'm happy to do that. But first, let me see. All right. So here's the chart, I think. Can we see this over here? See if I
yes.
can see if we can make that pretty big. Okay. So let me kind of go. So this is I guess this is a good question because this is the pretty much the main points of the problem are summarized in this chart, right? And so let's just go through the steps. So if you make a little chart like this, you have the two countries, and you have columns 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, where column 1 is the outputs before specialization. Column 2 is the outputs after specialization. Column 3 is the trade. Uh, column 4 is the outputs after the trade, and then column 5 is the gain for both countries for both kids. So let's start with column 1. Okay, so I believe this was just given in the question, right? So this will just say like Kentucky started at this point. Kentucky started at point B, right? That was given where they started allocation B, where they have 40 cigars and 20 bourbons, right? And also Cuba, I believe, started at point here. Cuba started at point U, where Cuba was starting with an allocation point of 80 cigars and 30 bourbon, right? So that was just given in the question, I believe. Okay, so that was given column 1. Column 2 is right. You went through and determined who had the comparative advantage in what, and who's going to specialize in what. And so I won't go through that whole process, but you probably just I hinted at who should specialize in what just based on the goods and the right. So obviously, if you work it out, Kentucky's going to specialize in bourbon. That's where bourbon comes from, and Cuba's going to specialize in cigars, who are known for making the best cigars basically in the world. So if you did the little analysis there, you determined that Cuba's going to specialize in cigars, and Kentucky's going to specialize in bourbon. Now, specializing just means that they're going to do all they can in that good. So if Kentucky specializes in bourbon, here's their chart up here. They're just going to make all the bourbon they can, which would be 100 point F with no cigars. Okay, so that's there. 100 bourbon and 0 cigars. And if Cuba specializes in cigars, they're going to make all the cigars they can, but no bourbon. So that means point R for Cuba, which is 200 cigars and 0 bourbon, right? Okay, so that's what they start with, and that's the specialization. So we got that part. And now the trade was given, right? The trade said it's 1 for 1, uh, and or maybe it's millions or whatever, but you can just do 1 for 1, where yeah, okay,
Sorry.
and then no, you're and okay, and then the trade was 1 to 1, and then they said they were going to trade 50 bourbons for 50 cigars, right? That was the trade that was given in the problem. And so if the trade is that, you just put that in like accounting wise here. So here's what Kentucky has after specialization. So they're going to trade away 50 bourbon and gain back 50 cigars. Now Cuba's going to trade away 50 cigars and gain back 50 bourbon. Right? So um, Kentucky's losing 50 in bourbon in the trade, gaining 50 cigars in the trade. Those 50 cigars are being taken from Cuba, so they lose 50 cigars and then gain 50 bourbon. So this little column 3, this accounting is just 50 bourbon going here and 50 cigars going here. And that's it. So then all you got to do is kind of add the items up in the little balance sheet, right? So if you go from 2 to 3 to 4, you get that for Kentucky, 100 minus 50 is 50 bourbon, okay? And also from cigars, you get 100 plus 50 is 50 cigars, okay? And then for Cuba, you got um, 0 plus 50 is 50 bourbon. And then for Cuba, you got 200 minus 50 is 150. So this column 4 should be what's left after the specialization and the trade. So this is what Kentucky has, and this is what Cuba had. And then column 5 is just trying to show what they gained in for both goods from going from here to here. So this is what they started with. This is what they have now after the trade. And so you can see that Kentucky is left with, or finishes with 50 bourbon. Initially, they only had 20, so that's a plus 30 of bourbon. The next thing is they have 50 cigars. They started with 40. That's a plus 10 cigars. Cuba has now 50 bourbon. They started with 30. That's a plus 20 bourbon. And Cuba now has 150 cigars. They only started with 80, so that's a plus 70 cigars. So this final column is just the plus, if any, that each country or economy gained in all the goods. Okay, so that's kind of the full breakdown of what you're doing in the chart. And then yeah, so does that make sense? Do you see what I kind of tried to illustrate there with the full chart?
Yes, yes. That is what I got on mine. I guess my real trouble was the other chart above.
The first one?
No, the blue and the pink
Oh, this one.
to the right, where then we have to use that to graph the next charts, correct?
Yeah, so if you're doing it in Excel, right, it was a little tricky to do this in Excel. I think it would have actually been, or it probably is easier just to draw it on a piece of paper because all you really need to do is like, so here's the first one, right? You're just plotting the points for Kentucky where they got an intercept of 50 and an intercept of 100. So to do the new one for Kentucky, they're going to specialize in bourbon, so they're going to start here, and then I think what I tried to show is the easiest way to do the new graph is just start with the specialized point 100 bourbon and 0 cigars, and then find out the point on the Y or the cigar axis in which if they traded all their bourbon, right, because it's a 1 for 1. So if they traded all these bourbon for cigars, they could gain 100 cigars. So the new intercept would just be 100 up here, like this one. Okay, and so you don't, I mean, you can, if you did it with my example, you could write a little equation that gives you all the points, but really all you need is this point and just draw a straight line. You don't really have to put all the uh, specific B primes and C primes. I mean, you can if you want to do that, but all you really need is this new line, which starts here and goes to here, kind of like that. So, but if you were trying to use this example, um, I had to do it so I could graph it and show you to the class. And so what I did is I put the uh, original allocations of the specialized good, which for Kentucky was bourbon, and then I showed all the trades they could possibly get, right? Which is basically it's a 1-to-1. If so, basically, if they start here and don't trade any, they have 100, and if they trade any of them, they're trading them for cigars. So this is keeping 100 bourbon. This is keeping 80 bourbon and trading 1 for 1 for 20 cigars. This is keeping 60 and trading for 40 cigars, and these are all the points. And it's this one was slightly easier because it was 1 for 1. Okay, and then for Cuba, same thing. Um, they're specializing in cigars, which is 200, but they could also trade any of those cigars for a bourbon at 1-to-1 ratio, and this is just showing that, right? So this is they kept them all. This is they kept 160 and traded for 40 bourbon. This is they kept 120 and traded for 80 bourbon. It's all 1-to-1. And if you get the other endpoint, which is easier because it's 1-to-1, they could trade all of these cigars for a maximum amount of 200 bourbon. So that was the other endpoint. Okay, so the only difference was Kentucky's endpoint goes from 100 to 100 up here. Okay, like that. And for Cuba, this endpoint goes from 200 and it goes all the way out to 200 here because now any of these cigars can be traded 1-to-1 for a bourbon. Okay, and so both of the new graphs after specialization and trade kind of look like this, where you start with the original specialized point and show any possible number of trades they can get up to the maximum of a 1-to-1. So if they start with 100 bourbon, the max they can get is 100 cigars. If Cuba starts with 200 cigars, the max they can get is 200 bourbon, and any point on these new curves.
Okay, that was helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Yeah. So that's I think that's.
I had a question about how we're supposed to graph them just at the end, like the letter E.
Okay.
So we're supposed to graph them using the table of the previous question, the longer table, I guess.
No. So yeah, good question. So what you're trying to show is so part E, the new graph. This question, I believe, we're still. Did I close it? Let's see. Yeah. So part F, I think is what we're asking. So you're asking about the new graph on part F. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay. There's a lot of letters, so it's easier. Um, okay. So what you're graphing in part F is where you're trying to graph a new graph, which would show all the possible combinations they could get after specializing and from any possible trade. So what you want to do is start with the point in which they specialize in, and then to show all the combinations where they can trade. So if you go look at this one, let's go through this one again. Okay, so here's the original graph, right? This is for Kentucky. So that one was easy. You just plot the points that were given here. Okay, so this is the original one. for Kentucky, and this is the original one for Cuba. You just plot those points. Now, in part F, what you're showing is the gain they could possibly get. And so what you want to do is start with this original one and just pick the specialization point. So for Kentucky, specializing for them is doing 100 bourbon and no cigars. So we're starting with point F, and then we're going to draw a new curve showing all the possible trades they can make for cigars. Okay? So starting with point F right here, F prime is the same as F, so this is Kentucky specializing. So essentially right here, 100 bourbon and no cigars is specializing, but we haven't traded yet. But Kentucky might want some bourbon to go. Might want some cigars to go with the bourbon. Then they want some combination, and so what they can do is after they specialize here, they can trade any 1-to-1. So they could trade, and these points are just simplifying what they could do. But you could see that they could trade 20 cigars and have, they could trade 20 bourbon and have 80 and 20, or they could trade 40 and have 60 and 40. But I think the fastest way to do this graph is show the point where they trade all of it, which would be because it's 1-to-1. So just draw. Let's assume that they trade all 100 bourbon for cigars. If they trade all 100 bourbon for cigars, they can get 100 cigars. So once you have the two intercepts, you can just draw the line through it. So if you get this point specializing and this point the maximum trade, so essentially 100 bourbon, 0 cigars, and the other intercept is 100 cigars, 0 bourbon. And then you can just draw a straight line right connecting those points, and that's going to cover all the possibilities they can get in a trade. So once you get the two extremes, I think the easiest thing to do is just draw that straight line if you're doing it on a piece of paper, and that'll cover it. And the other one, what happened here? So Cuba. Cuba is going to so this is the original graph, right? And Cuba is going to specialize in cigars. And so specializing in cigars means they're going to produce 200 cigars and no bourbon, point R. So start with that point R, 200 cigars and 0 bourbon for the new graph. And then for them, they can also trade 1-to-1, but they're going from cigars to bourbon because they're getting bourbon via Kentucky in a trade. So there's the specialized point, and again, easiest way to do this graph is do the maximum trade away all the cigars. If they trade all 200 cigars, how many bourbon can they get back? 200, because it's 1-to-1. Okay, so that's the specialized point. That is the maximum trade, and then if you just draw the line, get a ruler, connect the dots, that'll do it. Or if you're trying to use my Excel example, it's a little more difficult because to get Excel to graph the points, you gotta write a simple formula, which is basically showing all the trades they can get for each thing. But so that's what I did here is all the points on the new Kentucky graph are showing how much bourbon they kept and how many cigars they got back in a trade, right? So it's they start with the 100, and then any bourbon they trade away, they get the remaining. So these two numbers always have to add to 100 because it's a 1-to-1 trade. And the same for here. These two numbers have to add to 200 because it's a 1-to-1 trade. Okay, so all of these combinations for Kentucky are keeping a specific amount of bourbon and getting back the cigars in a trade. And all of these points for Cuba are keeping a specific amount of cigars and getting bourbon back in a trade. So any of these combinations are possible, depending on what Kentucky wants to do, and any of these combinations are possible for Cuba. We're just trying to illustrate all of the scenarios they could, basically what we're saying is at any point in this line, they've done better than they did before without trade, and the same for Cuba. So we're showing that there's a whole number of points and scenarios in which they can be better off, and in fact, anywhere on this graph is better off. Uh, okay.
Thank you.
Does that make sense? Or was that
Yeah, that made sense. I just didn't know how to graph it, but I get it now. Thank you.
yeah? You're welcome. So are you doing it? Are you doing it in Excel or are you just doing it with graphing paper
Oh, I'm doing it on Word.
on Word?
Yeah, it allows me to do it there.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. So if you're doing it, I'm not sure exactly. So all you need, if you can just get those points and kind of draw the straight line, or you can, um, like if it's easier to do it on a piece of paper, you could just kind of like take a picture of it and put it on into your Word file, like drop like cut and paste the picture or something.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, and yeah, so uh, if you're doing it by hand or drawing it, then you can do it that way. And if you're doing it in Excel, then you gotta tell Excel what the points are. So if you're going to calculate the specific points, you can do it like that. Okay. Box 5. All right. Any more questions on did I explain everything that was problematic here? Any more questions or parts I can go over for this one? Everyone, all how many people are here? 8. All 8 people can do it. Can do it now. Okay. All right. So before we do the review session, which we're going to do another one of these, so I'm sure. So do we need? Do the students do you guys want more time to do the homework? All right. That's what. Thank you for. Um, yeah, I was just waiting for a yes, so that's all we needed. So, oh, student, that was private. Okay. Um, how about I don't know. How about Friday? Is that good? Friday?
That's good.
Okay. All right. So, let's say that. So yeah. So again, if there's any, I want to make sure everyone understands it first. Like I think we do, but if there's any more questions, then make sure we can clear those up. Well, I don't want to count as the midterm because it's actually yeah. So well, no, I don't want to do that. Don't want to do that. Okay. All right. So the chapter 16 homework is now due Friday. All right. You can take, but if you're done with it, today or tomorrow, you don't have to wait till Friday. I just it seems like we had some questions, and so I don't want everyone just scrambling to try to finish it tonight. Okay, so let me post those new due. All right, so the midterm will be due on Monday, so make sure you plan accordingly. And then the chapter 16 homework will now be due Friday, and I will post the solutions for the chapter 16 homework like Saturday morning. So in case you need to double check those for the midterm, you can do that. But you got the whole practice exam too. So um, chapter 16. All right. So there we go. Okay, so chapter 16 homework due Friday, and the midterm 2 is still due on Monday. Okay. All right, sound good? Okay. Uh, okay. Yeah, and then like I know, like Thomas, if you want to make changes, I don't know that if you can delete the posts. So just if you're making any changes, just post a new file, and I'll look at the new one only. So just if you're gonna post something new with updates, you can just leave that one. I don't think you can delete it, and just either post a new one and I'll just grade the most recent one. Okay, now let's go through some practice questions. And one of those practice questions, the last one, is going to be another one of these trading things. So, all right. So you have a practice exam, and there's going to be three big questions. One is going to be on kind of the chapter 7, 8, 9 stuff with the different markets, and you'll kind of do the profit maximizing, um, how much output should they use, what price should they charge, what's the profit for different types of markets. So we'll go through that one. That'll be similar to what we did in the homework for chapter 7 and 8. Number 2 is going to be a couple game theory ones. It seems like most of you got a pretty good grasp of those. So a couple game theory ones from the oligopoly chapter. And the last one is going to be another uh, specialization in trade example. And so you have one more example to use for your take-home exam. All right, so three big questions. And it seems like the question number 3 has been the most, this type of question is been the most challenging for students. And so, again, make sure if there's any more questions on this type that we get those cleared away. All right. Here's the practice exam. Let's go ahead and start going through it. So here we go. Okay, 1 second. Okay, so for the first question, you're going to get a couple parts, and you're going to do part A is going to be define either the price or quantity. Part B will be define the other thing. Part C will be define the profit, and then I added a part D, which is going to be you're going to have enough information to determine what type of market it is. All right, so it'll be one of those 4 types that we talked about, and this should be clear what it is based on the type of question, and then there might be some extra information in the last part to help you determine what type of market it is. Okay. Number 1. Okay, so this is a 33 to each question is a third of the test. All right, so markets and profit max. So you're going to get an equation, or this one. The following equations describe a firm's total cost and marginal cost. Total cost is 100 plus Q squared, and marginal cost is MC equals 2Q. All right, so part A, if the firm is a price taker and other firms in this industry sell at a price of 100, what price should the manager of this firm put on the product? So when you see there, the firm is a price taker, that means they're going to take the price as given, okay, which is 100. So this one, if you recognize the problem for this type of one, it's really just the answers in the question. So if they're a price taker, they're going to charge the price of 100 that's given. Okay, so price is 100. P star is 100. So that's easy. Okay, but B, what level of output should be produced to maximize profit? So remember the profit max condition, which was marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So that's the best case for any firm, no matter what, for any individual firm. Okay, and so but we know that in a price taking scenario, um, which is gonna tell you that you're operating in pure competition. So if you see price taker anywhere, we're in pure competition. We're in pure competition. And you know, in pure competition, you have the perfectly elastic demand curve because the price is set. And if that's the case, you should know that your price equals marginal revenue in pure competition only. So this is the condition, but we have the price here is given, and we know that under pure competition, price equals MR, so that if MR equals MC, then P equals MC. So remember, we did that one as an example. So this is the general condition. This is the specific condition for pure competition. Okay, so you don't have to memorize it or anything, but just know that if you're doing a price taking pure competition scenario, uh, price equals marginal costs. Okay, and we have those two things. We have price now, 100, and we have marginal costs, 2Q. So what output, given those two things, should we produce? So if price is 100, then marginal cost is 2Q. What's the Q in which those two are equal? Just divide both sides by 2, and we get Q star, optimal output of 50. All right, then how much profit will be earned? So profit is total revenue minus total cost, and profit is so revenue for we're only looking at one type of good, or I mean a one good firm. And if they're selling one good, then the revenue they get is just the price for selling it, the market price times how much they sell. So this is revenue, price of the good times how much they sell, and then subtract the total cost function, which is given right there. Okay, so that's total revenue minus that's total cost, which is given. Now all you got to do for the remainder of the question is just put in the P star of the P of 100 and the Q of 50 into this equation for profit, and then just do the math. So price is 100, quantity is 50, right? You got that from here and here, and minus 100 minus 50 squared. Now, from look, I didn't really take any points off on the homework, but just one of the most common um, errors in the homework is this right here. So make sure when you're doing this type of question that you distribute the minus sign, because you're subtracting, you're paying for the fixed cost component and the variable cost component. So see how it's minus 100 minus 50 squared. So make sure that this is not added. So that was I saw that a few times in some of the students' homework. So I don't think I took off any points, but just note that see how this whole thing is subtracted. So it's going to be minus that minus that. So make sure you distribute the minus sign. Because if you add that, that means you're getting rewarded for a cost. You gotta pay for that. That comes out of your profit. So minus 100 minus 50 squared. So just distribute the minus there, and then 50 times 100 is 5,000 minus 100 minus 50 squared is 2,500, and so 5,000 minus 2500 is 2500 minus 100 is 2400. Okay, and then what type of market is this firm operating in? And so you see price taker. All right, there's only one type of firm that's a price taker, and that's the type of firm that operates in peer competition. Every other firm or firm in a different type of market has some control over price. But if you see the keyword price taker, you know you're in peer competition, and that leads you to the rest of it. And yeah. Number or next part. All right, so the first question is there's gonna be two examples in the same part. So you do one part, then you tell what type of market it is, and then the second one is gonna be probably a different type of market. So it's not always gonna be these two, but one of them is gonna be one of the four, and the other one will be one of the other four. Okay. The following equations describe a firm's demand, marginal revenue, total cost, and marginal cost. All right, so you got the demand curve, P equals 100 minus 4Q. You got the marginal revenue curve, MR equals 100 minus 8Q. Um, total cost equals 100 plus Q squared. And marginal cost equals 2Q. So you know right away, if you have a downward sloping demand curve, this is not pure competition, right? That's ruled out because the demand curve is not perfectly elastic. So if you see any demand curve given where you have, really, if you see any demand curve given that's going to be a downward sloping demand curve, you know that it's not pure competition because the price depends on the amount demanded. So you see that demand curve, that rules out pure competition. Part E. What level of output should be produced to maximize profit? So use the same condition. MR equals MC. That's always the starting point. That's always the profit maximizing condition. And in this question, MR is given and MC is given. So just start with that and put the equation in for that and that. So MR is given, that's 100 minus 8Q, and MC is given, that's 2Q. Okay, so MR equals MC, that's MR, that's MC. Now all you gotta do is find the Q, the output in which these two conditions are equal. All right, so just let's see, what are we doing? Let's add 8Q to both sides. 10Q equals 100. Then let's just divide both sides by 10. Okay, do a little algebra, and we get a Q star is 10. All right, and then part F, what is the market price? So for any of the other firms, monopoly or monopolistic competition or oligopoly, the way to find the price is just to first use this condition, then find your output, and then go look at the demand curve, or basically plug this Q into the demand curve, and that's the price they should charge because that's the best price they can charge. That's what the market is willing to pay at that output level. All right, so all you got to do is take that Q, and so here's our demand curve, right? Given P equals 10 minus 4Q. Now we got Q, just plug that Q, that 10 right there, and that's the price we should charge to max our profits. So here's our demand curve. That's given 100 minus 4Q. So P price equals 100 minus 4. Q is 10. Put in the 10. And that gives us 100 minus 40. And that gives us that this firm should charge a price of $60. Okay, part G. How much profit will be earned? All right, same formula. Profit's always total revenue minus total cost. And profit is total revenue is always the price of the good times how much we sell, P times Q. And then you're always going to subtract the total cost curve, which is always going to be given. So make sure you're well, I guess in this case it's the same total cost curve, but make sure you're looking at the correct total cost curve. In this scenario, I guess they're the same, but this total cost curve here is 100 plus Q squared. Okay, so total revenue is price times quantity minus total cost. Total cost is given right there. Price is 60. You determine that in part F. Q is 10. You determine that in part E, minus 100. And again, minus, distribute the minus sign. Q, which is 10 squared. And then just do the math here. 60 times 10 is 600, minus 100. Minus 10 squared is 100. And so we get 60 minus 100 minus 100, which is a profit of 400, sorry. Okay, and then last part here, H, you need one more clue to know what type of firm this is. So the firm is a public electricity company. What type of market is the firm operating in? So you should know that all public utilities, right? So if it says public electricity company or public gas company or public water company, that's a key that it's a monopoly. So you see here that it's a public electricity company. We know those examples fall under the monopoly example. And so there should be clear information, or for examples we talked about in class, where it tells you what type of market it is. So the first example, you know, because it's a price taker and there's no demand curve given, it's got to be pure competition. And this one, you know that it's a monopoly because it says this firm is a public electricity company, which is going to be some type of monopoly. Okay. Okay. Any questions on the first question, where you go through you determine the price, you determine the quantity, you calculate profit, and then you determine what type of market it is. Okay, everyone good here on this type of question? Next one. Okay, number 2 is going to be a couple game theory examples. All right, so this will be similar to the chapter 9 homework. Okay, so number 2, oligopoly game theory. So refer to the payoff matrix. So there's, for this one on your take-home exam, there'll be the first part where the picture is given, and you do the part, and then the second one you're going to have to draw the picture. So this one, the first one, number 2, refer to the payoff matrix for player A and player B. Player A has 2 strategies, up and down, whereas player B has 2 strategies, left and right. So player A's payouts are listed first, and player B's payouts are listed second. All right. So here you go. You get this given. This is player A. This is player B. Player A can go up or down. Player B can go left or right. And these are the payouts where the first number goes to player A, and the second number goes to player B. So like if player A goes up, player B goes left, player A gets 10, player B gets 20. So these are the 4 outcomes. Part A. Assuming no collusion between player A and player B. All right, this is always the first part. What is the likely outcome? And all you're going to do here is list the strategies and the payouts. So I recommend redrawing the game even if it's given, just so you can kind of go through the analysis and underline or circle the outcomes. All right, so it kind of looks like this. I just redid it, player A here and player B here. And remember, what you want to go through is determine how each player would respond given the other two players' options. So we've done this before, but I'll kind of go through what player A would do in response to player B, and what player B would do in response to player A, and then the outcome is going to be the outcome in which they're both underlined. Okay, well, essentially, looks like here both players. Well, let's go through it. All right, so if player B goes left, player A has two choices. Player A has two choices: go up and get 10, or go down and get -10. So underline the 10 because player A would go up. If player B goes right, player A can go up and get 15, or down and get 10. So again, player A is going to go up, so I underline that. So you can see that no matter what, player A doesn't care what player B does. Player A is always going to go up. All right, so player A is always going to go up. What about what's player B going to do? So if player A goes up, which player A is going to, then player B is going to go left. Okay, because going left gives player B 20, and going right gives them 8. So they would go left. And if player B goes down, which they're not going to do, player B can go left and get 7, or go right and get 10. Okay, so there's that. And so player B's choice depends on what player A does, but player A is always going to go up. So if player A always goes up, then we know player B's response to up is left. So if you do that analysis, then the answer for part A will be the place where both numbers are underlined or circled or however you do it. So this is it, because player A is always going to go up, and player B's response to up is left, and so this is the outcome. So all you got to do is describe that in terms of the strategies and the payout. So the strategies are up for player A and left for player B, and the outcome is 10 for player A and 20 for player B. Okay. Part B. What is the likely outcome if player A and player B can reach a collusive agreement? All right, so this one depends on if they can reach an agreement. So if you're starting here, look at all the scenarios and look for the cell in which, if they move, both players can be better off. Now, sometimes one player will be better off, but not the other, and if that's the case, they're not going to reach an agreement. So if you look at all these scenarios, this one's better for player B, but for player A, but in terms of player B, they're with no collusion, they're at 20. Any other scenario gives them 7, 10, or 8. So why would player B want to make an agreement in a worse and end up in a worse situation? Player B wouldn't, right? So player B is not going to do that. Okay, so player A might want to get somewhere else, but player B doesn't have any incentive to make an agreement, because they're already, without an agreement, player B is at the best spot. So player B can't improve, and if both players can't improve, then they're not going to reach an agreement. So player A and player B would not reach a collusive agreement because player B is already getting the highest possible payout possible of 20. Okay, and C. All right, there might be a temptation to cheat on the collusive agreement. What's the likely outcome if player A cheats? Now, this question doesn't need to be answered here because there's no agreement. So the questions will be worded like, what's the outcome with no collusion? Can they reach an agreement? And what's the outcome if one of the players cheats? Now, if the answer to this one is they don't reach an agreement, then the answer to this one is there's no cheating. So if you determine in part B that there's no agreement, you can just write this in part C. Without a collusive agreement, player A cannot cheat, or player whatever it is. Okay, so I word it like this because I want to make sure you can go through it and determine if they can reach an agreement, what is it, and if they don't reach an agreement, then for part C, just say that no one's going to cheat because there's no agreement. Okay. Okay, so the rest of question 2 is another example, and this one you're going to give it's going to give you a little word problem, and you got to draw the payoff matrix. So here we go. Assume Toyota and Hyundai play the following simultaneous move game. Toyota has 2 pricing options for its 2019 Prius, and Hyundai has 2 pricing options for its 2019 Ioniq. All right, so both Toyota and Hyundai can either price their new hybrid vehicles at $20,000 or at $25,000. Okay, and this describes the outcomes. If both price at $20,000, each earns profits of $3 million. If both price at $25,000, each earns profits of $4 million. If one prices at $20,000 and one prices at $20,000 and one prices at $25,000, the company that prices at $20,000 earns $5 million, and the company that prices at $25,000 gets $1 million. So what we're seeing here is that there's kind of a game going on between the two companies where if their best case is they both charge a higher price and they get the revenue, but they're worried about the other company undercutting them because I guess if the customers are kind of deciding between these similar goods, then if one of them is offering a similar vehicle at $5,000 less, a lot of customers are gonna buy that. So each company is trying to kind of get the customers from the other by charging a lower price, but the problem is that they're both kind of trying to do that. Right. So part D. Draw the payoff matrix for this game. Okay, so here's Toyota. They can price at $20,000 or $25,000. Here's Hyundai. They can also price at $20,000 or $25,000. Now the problem said that if they both price at $20,000, they both get $3 million, right? There's that. And if they both price at $25,000, they both get $4 million. But if one prices at $20,000, the other prices at $25,000, the company that prices at $20,000 earns $5,000, and the other company gets 1. So here's Hyundai pricing at $20,000 and Toyota pricing at $25,000. That means that Hyundai gets most of the customers. Even though they're charging a lower price, they get a bunch of the customers. They get 5. Toyota gets 1. And the other case up here, Toyota charges the lower price. They get most of the customers. They get 5. Hyundai charges the higher price, and they only get 1. So it's kind of you can see that the payouts are symmetrical, right? But the outcomes depend on what the prices are. So part A or part D, he's got to draw this here. Okay. Part E. Assuming no collision between Toyota and Hyundai, what is the likely outcome? All right, strategies and payouts. So here are the same kind of analysis. Just go through and list what each firm would do in response to the other. Okay, so let's start with Toyota. If Hyundai prices at $20,000, Toyota can price at $20,000 and get 3, or $25,000 and get 1. They're going to price at $20,000. If Hyundai prices at $25,000, Toyota can price at $20,000 and get 5, or $25,000 and get 4. So no matter what, Toyota's pricing at $20,000 without an agreement. Okay, we're going to get the same for Hyundai, but let's go through it from their perspective just to make sure we get this. So if Toyota prices at $20,000, Hyundai could price at $20,000 to get $3 million, or 25,000 and get 1, they're going to price it 20,000 and get that 3, which I underlined. If Toyota prices at 25,000, Hyundai could price at 20,000 and get 5, or 25,000 and get 4. So again, they're going to get this 5 million, price at 20,000. So what we've determined is that without an agreement, both firms are going to price at 20,000, which is going to give us this outcome, which is listed here. Toyota prices at 20,000, Hyundai prices at 20,000. Toyota gets 3 million, Hyundai gets 3 million. So the answer here is the two strategies, which are the pricing options, and then the payouts, which are the same for these two firms. They both get $3 million. Now F, what? So same sequence of questions here. What is the likely outcome if Toyota and Hyundai can reach a collusive agreement? So in this one, again, always look and see if both firms can find a spot which they can both improve. All right, so here, Toyota's worse off. Here, Hyundai's worse off, but look at this outcome. Okay, if they can make that deal and both agree and not cheat and make some trusted agreement, and they both keep pretty much this or a lot of the customers, but they charge a higher price equally, then the customers have no choice but to buy one of the two $25,000 vehicles because they're both charging the same price. So if they can both charge 25,000, then they can both get 4 million. So that's what they would do if they could reach an agreement, because they're both getting an extra million by both agreeing to charge a little bit higher price and give the customers no choice but to buy. They have a choice of company or type of car, but they don't have a choice of what price they pay. All right, so if they reach that agreement right here, go from here to here, the agreement is they both price at 25,000. Those are the strategies, and they both get 4 million, right? So see the difference between this one and this one. We started here in the yellow cell for the first game, but there was no outcome in which both players could improve, right? That's why we didn't move. That's why we didn't reach an agreement. We did reach an agreement here because there was a spot where both players could or both firms can improve, which was this spot. So Toyota got a plus 1 million and Hyundai got a plus 1 million, so they both improved. Okay. G. There might be a temptation to cheat on the collusive agreement. What is the likely outcome if Toyota cheats? All right. So it means exactly what it says. If they're here and they make this agreement, the agreement is they both price at 25,000. Cheating on the agreement means that one of the firms doesn't do that. They charge 20,000. All right, they undercut, and that's what happens. So if this is the agreement and Toyota cheats, Toyota cheating means they charge 20,000 instead. So if they agree to do this, but Toyota just breaks the deal and charges 20,000, then they're left here. All right, cheating means that Toyota charged less, 20,000. They get the 5 million. Hyundai kept with the agreement, 25,000, and they only get 1 million. So this is Toyota cheating, which specifically means that they agreed to charge 25,000. They cheated, charged 20,000, and then this would be the outcome. All right, so here's the outcome: Toyota cheating 20,000, Hyundai pricing at 25,000. Toyota gets 5 million, and Hyundai gets 1 million. All right, and so again, I think I did. So I don't know if you're doing the game theory problems in Excel. I put my examples up here if you want to look at those. Okay, here's this is for 2A. So this is the up and down, left and right one. Right? You can look at that. So there's nothing special going on in this Excel file. It's just that uh, I was able to illustrate it better and copy and paste this um, these tables into Word. So there's no formulas or anything. It's just if you want to if you want to use this to kind of draw your payoff matrices you could, or you can just do it on a graphing paper or whatever and do it that way. So there's the Excel work for that one, and here's the Excel work for the Hyundai Toyota one. All right. Okay. Questions on the game theory type of question or analyses? Anything we did here? So you got a nice example of one that where you don't reach an agreement and one where you do reach an agreement. All right. So everyone good on this type of question? Anything I need to you want me to go over here? All right, and even if so, there was a where I think the chapter 9 homework is another. So if you wanted some more examples, even if you so some students didn't even if you didn't do homework 9, I'd recommend looking at the problems and I posted my solutions. So even if you didn't do this homework, take a look at just for practice um, the chapter 9 solutions. Okay, so here's the one for Nintendo and Atari. So that's one more nice example of it's similar to what we just did, but just uh, so for practice, I'd recommend just kind of trying to do the problems without looking at the answers and just kind of compare. But there's one more nice example there. Question 2 on homework 9. If you want to get if you want to get some practice in for that one. Okay. All right. The last one is going to be everyone's favorite question. One more on the specialization and trade from the chapter 16. Okay, so we'll have plenty of examples for this one, and you'll better prepare yourself doing the homework by Friday. All right, so here's one more. Number 3. Okay, same type of question. Different countries, different products. The following hypothetical production possibilities tables are for Hawaii, and Papua New Guinea. All right, so I'll just call that PNG. All right, so these are um, island countries that are going to trade with each other. Or I guess Hawaii is not a country, but there's somewhat within the realm of location. Not really, but they're both islandish. Um, so assume that before specialization and trade, the optimal product mix for Hawaii is alternative B, and for PNG is alternative U. All right, so they're always going to get the first part, which is given. And also always pay attention to the initial point because that's what you're comparing it with when you do the gains from trade. So Hawaii is starting at B, PNG is starting at U. All right, part A. Okay, this part's all you got to do is either plot the points in Excel or plot the points on graphing paper. Okay, and so please draw part A, the production possibilities curves for Hawaii and PNG, including the optimal product mix before specialization and trade. Okay, so there's the just put the points in for Hawaii, A, B, C, D, E, F. There they are. And point the points in for PNG, R, S, T, U, V and W. All right, so you just put the points in, draw a line. Okay, so on this, the spreadsheet I posted for midterm 2 is right there under practice midterm 2, and that has the work for this one as well. Okay, so if you're doing this in Excel, again, you don't have to, but if you are, kind of just set it up like this, like I did over here. So put put one of the countries there, put the two goods here, and kind of just, if you put the points in kind of like this, when they're given A, B, C, D, E, F, and just make Excel make a graph of that, it'll kind of graph it for you. So if you arrange it like this and just do like a, what kind of graph is this? It's a scatter with lines, right? So you got the points, and you got a line through it. All right, so part A is just put these points down, draw a graph, and plot these points and draw a graph there. Those are the original production possibilities curves for both countries, or both economies. Part B. Are comparative cost conditions such that Hawaii and PNG should specialize? If so, what product should each produce? Okay, so we've got marlins, all right, big fish, big marlins, and we have coconuts. You can see that it takes many more resources to produce a marlin than it does coconuts. And let's start with marlins. Okay, so how about what's the opportunity cost of one marlin for Hawaii? Okay, so each time Hawaii produces a marlin, they give up 100 coconuts, right? So plus one marlin minus 100 coconuts, which means their opportunity cost of one marlin is minus 100 coconuts. All right, what about for PNG? PNG, each time they produce 10 marlins, they give up 20 coconuts. Plus 10 minus 20, plus 10 minus 20, no matter what. So producing 10 marlins, they give up minus 20 coconuts, divided by 10, which means that one marlin is equivalent to giving up minus 2 coconuts. All right, so remember, the comparative advantage goes to the country who gives up less. All right, each time Hawaii produces a marlin, they're losing 100 coconuts. That's a lot. Whereas PNG, when they produce a marlin, they're only giving up 2. Okay, so their cost, because they're giving up much less, is only 2 coconuts compared to 100. So PNG gives up much less to produce a marlin, right? They're using their resources much more efficiently. So because what they give up is less, that means that PNG has a comparative advantage and should specialize in producing marlins. Okay, again, because they give up less coconuts. All right, let's go through the coconut example. So what's the opportunity cost of coconuts for Hawaii? Every time they produce 100 coconuts, they give up a marlin, right? Plus 100 minus 1. So 100 coconuts, the cost of that is giving up one marlin. Now, we want to get this in terms of coconuts, so divide both sides by 100, which means that one coconut, the opportunity cost of that is giving up 1/100th of a marlin. Okay, what is the opportunity cost of coconuts for PNG? Every time they produce 20 coconuts, they lose 10 marlins. So plus 20 minus 10. Okay, 20 coconuts, they give up 10 marlins. And if you put this in terms of coconuts, divide both sides by 20, that means that one coconut is, the opportunity cost of that is giving up minus 1/2 marlin. 10 divided by 20. Okay. Okay, so who's giving up less? When Hawaii produces a coconut, they only give up 1/100th of a marlin, and PNG, when they produce a coconut, they give up a whole half a marlin, right? So 1/100th of a marlin is much less than a half. So Hawaii is giving up much less. They're doing it much more efficiently to produce coconuts, so they're going to have a comparative advantage in producing coconuts, and they're going to do that. They're going to specialize in that. So Hawaii has a comparative advantage and should specialize in producing coconuts. Okay, so we've determined thus far that PNG is going to use all the resources and produce marlins only, and Hawaii is going to use all the resources and produce coconuts only. Okay, so when we get to that final graph, we know that PNG doing marlins, so they're going to start here at point W, and the new graph will show what they can get in a trade for coconuts. And then Hawaii is going to do only coconuts producing. And so they're going to start here, 0.8, 500, 0. And any marlins they gain are going to be achieved in a trade. So they're going to start here, and we're going to show in part F, I think it is, what they can get in a trade. Part C. Okay, what is the total gain in both marlins and coconuts that would result from such specialization? All right, so put the two countries, again, technically Hawaii is not a country, but put the two economies, and column 1 is going to be outputs before specialization, so that's given, right? So we were told that Hawaii is going to start at B, 100 and 400. I mean 1 and 400. And we were told that PNG is going to start at U, which is 30 marlins and 40 coconuts. All right, so again, column 1, the initial points will be given, and just put in those production alternatives from the points that are given. So we're told that Hawaii is going to start with this point, and PNG is going to start with this point. Now, do the specialization. Hawaii is going to produce only coconuts. And how many coconuts can they produce? If they produce only coconuts, that essentially means that they're going to go to point A, right? 500 coconuts, no marlins. PNG is going to specialize in marlins. And if they do all the marlins they can, that means they're going to do that point W, 50 marlins, no coconuts. All right, now all you have to do is report the total gain in both kids by just doing the specialization. So after specialization, we have 500 coconuts. Or let's do marlins first because I put that first. After specialization, we have 50 marlins, okay, from PNG. Before, we had, between the two countries, 30 plus 1. So initially, we had 30 plus 1, and so the gain is 50 minus 31, which is 19 marlins, just by specializing. Now for coconuts, we now have 500, right, from Hawaii. Initially, between the two countries, we had 400 plus 40, 440. So the gain is 500 minus 440, which is 60. Okay, so just by specializing, we gained 19 marlins and 60 coconuts. Okay. All right, so everyone following so far, I think parts D, E, and F are when things start to get okay. Point D, part D. Part D. What are the limits of the terms of trade? All right, and so this you just want to see um, the realm of possibilities that they can both get, or what trade is going to make it so both countries would agree to it. All right, so all you have to do here is start with the good they're going to specialize in, state their domestic opportunity costs, and say that they got to beat that for both countries, and then put it in terms of one good, and then those are the limits in which the trade can be. So start with one country. Um, P&G is going to specialize in marlins. Okay, so what that means is they have to get in a trade. They would only agree to a trade that's better than their domestic opportunity cost of marlins. Their domestic opportunity cost of marlins is minus 2 coconuts. So in a trade, they got to get back at least more than 2 coconuts. Otherwise, they would just not trade, right? So P&G needs better than to beat 1 marlin equals minus 2 coconuts. So they got to get back more than 2 coconuts. Okay, what about Hawaii? They're going to specialize in coconuts. So they need to beat their domestic opportunity cost. Their domestic opportunity cost for coconuts is 1 coconut equals 1/100th of a marlin. Okay, so the math is a little confusing, but that means they have to get at least better than that, which means like 2/200ths of a marlin, something better than that. All right, so Hawaii needs to get at least 1 coconut equals 1/100th of a marlin. So they have to get back something bigger than this. Okay, so we stated the domestic opportunity cost for the 2 goods that are being specialized in. Now let's put them in terms of the same thing. So if we put them in terms of marlins, this is already in terms of marlins. So put that over here. And how do you put this in terms of marlins? 1 marlin. Um, multiply both sides by 100, which means that 1 marlin equals minus 100 coconuts. Right? If you multiply both sides here by 100. So if you put these 2 conditions in terms of 1 marlin equals, and you get the first one is that, and the second one is that. So there's a whole bunch of possibilities where the trade can be 1 marlin equals 3 coconuts, 4 coconuts, 5, anything in between these two. All right, anything bigger than 2 and less than 100, both countries will agree to it. Anything less than 2 or bigger than 100, one of the countries isn't going to do that. Okay. All right. So again, remember you could also put this in terms of coconuts, but because that way is going to give us fractions of marlins, I'm going to just leave it like this. All right, so the trade has to be somewhere in between these boundaries. We're going to trade 1 marlin for something bigger than 2 coconuts and something less than 100 coconuts. All right, and part E is going to give us that trade, which is if you did this part right, it's going to fall within the limits. So suppose the actual terms of trade are 1 marlin for 50 coconuts, and you can see that 1 marlin for 50 coconuts is within these limits. All right, so that's right in the middle. So they're both going to like that. They're both going to make that deal, and the deal is 1 marlin for 50 coconuts. That's the trade rate. But we're going to trade 2 marlins at 1 to 50. So 2 marlins will give us back 100 coconuts. So whoever has the marlins is going to trade away 2 marlins, and whoever has the coconuts is going to give back 100 coconuts. So this is the these are the terms. And the important thing is this is the actual trade you're going to put into your accounting column. All right, 2 marlins go in exchange for 100 coconuts. So this is the actual trade that's going to go right there in column 3. All right, what are the gains from specialization in trade for both Hawaii and PNG? Okay. Okay, we got columns 1 and 2 from here. All right, so I just restate those. Column 1 goes right there, and column 2 goes right there. So we already got that. Now, what we're doing here is column 3. We're going to do the trade. We'll do the outputs after the trade, and then we'll show what each country has gained, if any. Okay, so this column 1 is from there. Column 2 is from there. Let's start here in column 3. Let's do the trade. All right, so the trade is given here. The trade is that 2 marlins are going in exchange for 100 coconuts. So here's Hawaii. They specialize, which means they do all coconuts. So they got 0 marlins and 500 coconuts. So that means that they're going to do the trade of coconuts for marlins. So they're going to gain these 2 marlins, and they're going to trade away or trade back 100 coconuts. So this is the trade. They gain 2 marlins, they give back 100 coconuts. There's the trade. Now it's got to equal out the other side where PNG is specializing in 50 marlins and 0 coconuts. They're gonna trade away those 2 marlins and they get back 100 coconuts. All right, so see how the marlins go from here to here. -2 goes to a +2 here, and the coconuts go from here to here. -100 goes +100 here. So this column should sum to 0, but we're trading where the coconut country trades the coconuts and gets the marlins, and the marlin country trades the marlins and gets the coconuts exactly how it said what the trade was here. All right. Column 4, what are the outputs after trade? Okay, so the outputs after trade are just column 2 plus column 3. For Hawaii, 0 marlins plus 2 marlins is 2 marlins. 500 coconuts minus 100 coconuts, the remainder is 400 coconuts. So this is what they're left with after trading away the coconuts and gaining the 2 marlins. For PNG, 50 marlins minus 2 marlins is 48 marlins. 0 coconuts plus the 100 coconuts they got in the trade is now 100 coconuts. Okay, so column 4 is what they have for both countries, for both goods, after they specialize and after they trade. And so after they trade, they're both going to have, you know, something in both categories. Now, column 5, what are the gains for specialization in trade for both countries? So you're comparing column 4 to column 1 for both countries. So let's see. Initially, before any of this stuff, Hawaii started with 1 marlin. Now they have 2. So that's a +1. Wow. What did they start with for coconuts? 400. They still have 400, so they didn't gain any coconuts, but in doing this whole thing, they gained a marlin. So marlins are valuable here, so you don't have to gain everything, or you don't have to gain in both goods, but you got to gain at least something. So what their gain here was 1 marlin, but no coconuts. PNG, they initially had 30 marlins. Now they've got 48, and that's a +18. 18 marlins they gain. They had 40 coconuts. Now they have 100, and that's a +60 coconuts. All right, so these are the gains for both goods for both countries. Hawaii gained a marlin. PNG got 18 marlins and 60 coconuts. All right, so everyone sees how we did the chart for this one, how we do the columns 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Initial points which are given, do the specialize, do the trade that's reported in part E, then just show what they have after specialization and trade, and then there's going to be a gain in something. You just got to compare what they have now in column 4 with what they started with in column 1, and it should be better than the initial situation. Okay. All right, then last part F. On the same graph for part A, let's add the new production possibilities curves for Hawaii and PNG with specialization and trade, including the new optimal product mix from part E, which you don't have to put, but it's easy to put if you're doing it on paper, but if you're not, don't worry about it. Okay, so remember what this one, the easiest way to do it is pick the specialization point and show what they can gain in a trade for the other good. All right, so and I'll do it. I'll pull up the Excel file in a minute, but actually, it's probably easier if I do because I can compare them. All right, so here is Hawaii, right? This is the initial one. Those were given those production alternatives, and Hawaii is going to specialize in coconuts, right? Yeah. Yes. Okay. All right. So Hawaii is going to specialize in coconuts. So if we start with this, then on the new graph, start with the specializing point, which is all the coconuts and no marlin. So they're going to specialize in coconuts, which means start here at point A. So the point A, 500 coconuts, no marlins, is the same one here. See that? But all these other points are what they can possibly get in the trade. So the trade is 1 marlin for 50 coconuts, right? So any of these coconuts can be exchanged at the 1 to 50 mark. And that means each of these, so each 50 coconuts can be turned into a marlin. So that means they can trade, you know, they can be left with 450 and have 1. They can trade away 100 and have 2. Or if they trade all these 500 marlins at that given exchange rate, then divide 500 by 50. That's the maximum trade at 50 to 1. So if they trade all 500, the most they can get back is 10 marlins. Okay, so there's the specialized point. Point F prime over here is if they traded all the coconuts for marlins, which is the most they can get is 10. So again, I think the easiest way to do this last graph is start with the specialized point and then show the other intercept, which is the max amount they can get in a trade. So if they traded all these 500 coconuts, the most they can get is 10 because each 50 of these is equivalent to a marlin. So if you divide 500 by 50, that's 10. Now they could get any of these in-between points, all of which are better than, see how this graph kind of goes out like that? All these points, so any trade, they're better off. And if you get this point from there and just show the maximum trade and just connect the dots, that's your graph for that one. And if you're doing it in Excel, like you're telling Excel to graph the new one, all you have to do is see how I did it with the blue area. So start with put in the specialized goods are the same. So this is the same as this, and then show all the combinations they can get of marlins in a trade. So if they keep all the coconuts, they get no marlins. If they trade 100 coconuts, they get back 2 marlins. If they trade 200, they get back 4. All right, so these are all the combinations of keeping some amount of coconuts and gaining some marlins in a trade with PNG. all the way to the extreme where they traded all those 500 coconuts and got back 10 marlins. All right, and then for PNG, they're doing the marlins, and they're trading for coconuts. So they're going to specialize in marlins, which means that they're going to produce only marlins, which is that point, W. Right there. So see how the W is 50 marlins, no coconuts? That's the same point here. That's they're specializing in that, so that's going to be the same point. Now, all these reflect gains from trade, but just to get the other endpoint to complete the graph, I like to go to the end and see what they could possibly get if they traded all the marlins. Okay, so each marlin gives them back 50 coconuts. So each of those marlins would give them back 50. So if they trade all 50, what's 50 times 50? 2,500, right? If the exchange rate is 1 marlin for 50, then 50 times 50 is a possible, if they wanted to get rid of all their marlins, they can get back in the trade 2,500 coconuts. So see how they're really gaining a bunch of coconuts in this deal. All right, so see how it goes from here's the initial one and the new one. All these points on the green curve are better than the initial point. So if they specialize here and make any trade for coconuts, they're better off. Okay, so see how I graphed this. The new PNG curve is this yellow area or this orange area, where put in the specialized part, the marlin should be the same, and then all the other points like here and here reflect a trade for keeping this amount of marlins and getting this back in a trade. So here's keeping all the marlins. Here's keeping 40 marlins and trading 10 marlins for at 50 to 1, which would mean 50 coconuts. They could also keep 30 marlins and get back 1,000 coconuts by trading 20 marlins. They could see these are all the, and then the extremes, they could trade away all of their marlins, all 50, and gain back 2,500, 50 times 50. Okay, so that's kind of how you're going to do that one. All right, so if I could summarize the graph again, start with the specialized point. So if you're doing this on graphing paper, start with the specialized point and show the other intercept, which is the maximum they can get in a trade from the other country. Okay, and then just connect the dots. Or if you're doing it in Excel and you want Excel to graph your points specifically like I did, throw in the goods in which the country specializes in, and those points will be the same as the previous graph. And then your other points for the other good they're trading for shows all the combinations they can get back by keeping a specific amount, and then the rest is what they gain back from the other good in a trade. So see how the remainder here is traded for the exchange rate of marlins, and for this one, the remainder of the coconuts was traded for marlins. So here, PNG kept a certain amount of marlins, and these are different ways they could trade back for coconuts. Hawaii kept a certain amount of coconuts, and these are different amounts of coconuts they kept in exchange for a certain amount of marlins. So any of these things are possible given the exchange rate. Same for PNG, and all the points for both Hawaii and PNG on the new curve, the green curves, they're better off, right? So you can look at any point and see how this curve goes from like 500 to 10 like that. So any trade they're gaining, and this curve started at 50 and went to 100, but now it goes from 50 all the way to 2,500. So if you were to do them on the same graph, it would kind of, this one, the new curve would be like this if it shifts out, and this one would kind of be like that. So you're trying to illustrate uh, all the possible gains from trade. Yeah. Okay, so that's that's that one. And I know this is probably this question has been the most challenging, but we've got a bunch of examples. And any questions on this specific one, or any of the any questions if you're it could be a question if you're doing it if you're drawing it, or any Excel type questions or anything based on this question. So any questions on part A is pretty easy. It's drawing the curves. I think everyone's got how to do the comparative advantage. And C, I think the trouble areas are where we get to the limits, and then part E where you do the whole chart, and then part F where you do the new curve. Okay, so everyone clear on what to do for this type of problem now, or any? Okay. All right, and then you know, if you're doing your homework if you're doing your homework questions for chapter 16, which are now due Friday, you can email me if you want to, if you have specific questions, or if you're going over this one, or any there's a bunch of examples. So if you don't understand any of the examples, then let me know, and I can try to make them more clear. Okay. All right. So everyone good here for now? Let's. Okay. So that was the review part. Here's so under midterm 2, spring 2021. There's the Word document and the PDF are just the practice exam. Here's the solutions we just went through, so you can look at those for reference. And then here, okay, and then here is the Excel file if you want to use any of those templates for the game theory or for the gains from trade to use as an example. So all that's there that you can use. All right, so let's pull up your exam, which is due next Monday, and then I have an extra credit thing I'll pull up in a minute. But so this is all the stuff we just did, and then where it says midterm 2 spring 2021, this is the actual test. Okay, so you'll see something similar where if you can send me a PDF or a Word document, that would be the preferred format. And this is the same due date as the syllabus. It's due next Monday, April 19th. And just like the last one, you're going to email it to me. So when you complete it, email me your answer sheet in Word or PDF, just to my email address. And that you can, it's due on Monday, next Monday, but you can send it whenever you're done. Okay, and so you got one here on the different types of markets. So you're going to do the profit maximizing stuff, determine price, quantity, profit, and then what type of firm is it for 2 different examples. There's a game theory one here, or there's 2 game theory ones. And so just a note for this first one, this is called like a prisoner's dilemma thing. And so note that just for this first one, the payouts, it says here, but I just want to clarify, the payouts are for years in prison. And so usually you're looking at the biggest possible number, but because just for this one only, years in prison are bad, that the players want the lowest possible number. So like see how the outcomes for player 1 are 2, 4, 3, and 0. 0 means no prison. 2 means 2 years in prison. So the preferable outcome is the least number of years in prison, right? So just note that you're not trying to get the highest number for this one. You're trying to get the least because you want to minimize your prison years. All right. So just make a note that you're trying to get the lowest number, not the highest. So, yeah. And this one's similar. And then number 3, you're going to do another specialization in trade, where I made up an example where we got two countries. We got Snoop, we got Dog, and they're trading gin for juice. And I think I made the trade nice and easy. 1-to-1. Yeah, so it's going to be 1-to-1 trade, and the rest of it's similar to what we did. Okay. Any questions on what I want you to do for the take-home exam? Okay. All right. So one last thing, and then I'll let you you know. Okay. So here's all the examples. So the Word document and the PDF are the same exact thing. So you can refer to whichever one is the same thing. And then I have some extra credit questions if you want to do these. Let me pull this up. All right. So um, here's extra credit. And so if you want to do this, it's not that long. It's just a couple short answers. But if you do it and make a good attempt, I'm not going to grade it too critically, but I'll try to give you up to 10 points on any of the midterms, this one or that one. So if you want to bank some extra points just in case, you can do that. So you can get, if you do this, you can get 10 points on, and I'll spread it over the midterms too. If you need, you can't get over 100%, but if you could put like 5 points to midterm 1 and 5 points to midterm 2, whatever. So, or if, just to make sure if you think you missed something in midterm 2, like, part of the gains from trade 1, you can get an extra 10 points here and make up for something you might not be sure about there. So doing this assignment with the midterm by next Monday, you can get an extra 10 points. All right, so this is going to be emailed as well by next Monday, and these are kind of short answers where I found some things that related to the last election, specifically to California's summer propositions. So there's one on Proposition 21, which was on rent control. We talked about rent control a little bit in Chapter 3 for supply and demand. So here's the proposition and just a few short answers. Would rent control lead to a price ceiling or a price floor? And part B is you can draw the supply and demand diagram or just put in an image where something that shows that type of impact on demand, where how a price ceiling or a price floor, whatever this is, affects the demand curve. Okay. C is, would that lead to a surplus or a shortage? Remember we talked about that in rent control. And then D, you can just Google if that, you probably already know, but see if that proposition passed or failed. And then one more on Prop 22, which was specifically for the type of employee rules for app-based drivers, which were pretty much, well, actually there's, I thought it was just Uber and Lyft at first, but it applied to all of those. Now there's like 10 food delivery companies too as well. There's DoorDash, there's Uber Eats, there's Grubhub, there's I don't know, every time I look there's more. So this one was applied to that. So there's the proposition. Oh, and also, so I found a nice website that explains not just just these propositions, but all the propositions in like 1 minute. So these little links will kind of explain the proposition in 1 minute. If you were familiar with, or if you wanted to look at those, you probably already saw this when if you voted for the last election, but this one for Prop 2, this question has to do with minimum with additional costs. So this one, let me see if I can rephrase. So the law was changed to make these drivers employees, and this law changed it back, right? So this one I believe passed, and this changed it back so they could be private contractors, right? It'll explain that. And so some of these questions are just like who would be affected. So if there's if they had to pay minimum wage as opposed to private contractors, that's going to be an added cost. Who would pay some of the costs? Just a quick couple of yes or no answers. Would the prices rise or fall? Some overtime questions, and then yeah. All right. So just a couple short answers there. All right. So if you want to do these extra credit ones, I'm not going to grade it very hard. I'm probably going to give you full credit if you make a good attempt. Shouldn't take you too long, and you can get some extra points for this midterm or the last midterm. And just in case you're not sure of some of the answers for this midterm, you can bank an extra 10 points. So there's that thing. Okay, so we got a bunch of things. I'll state them here. So you got chapter. All right, so those are the three things that if you want to do, well, you definitely have to do the midterm. So make sure of all these things that you get the midterm done. That's the most important thing. So um, I gave you an extra, whatever, 4 or 5 days to do chapter 16 because I wanted to make sure we're good on that. So take your time on that. Chapter 16 homework is now due Friday. Midterm 2, due next Monday via email. And then if you want to do this one, get some extra credit points, I'd recommend making sure you do the chapter 16 homework and the midterm first. And then if you have some extra time, I don't think this extra credit will take more than half an hour. You can do that too, and that's due next Monday. And if you can either, if you're doing this, you can put it at the end of your midterm, or you can send it separately, whatever you want to do. But this is optional. But if you make a nice attempt here, you can get 10 points on the exams. Okay. Any questions on anything that we got going on here? Good. All right. So I think so. That's what we got for tonight. Hopefully that helped explain a little more about the gains from trade question. I know that one's a little challenging, but once you get the hang of it, it's kind of fun, maybe. And all right, so chapter 16 homework and midterm 2 and extra credit. Let me know if you have any questions on those things, and you got the due dates there. And I think that's all I got for tonight. Thank you for joining, and have a good rest of your week. And I'll see you next Monday, and we'll start doing macroeconomic stuff, which will be little bit different, kind of fun. So thank you.
Thanks, Professor.
Thank you.